Today's lesson is part 1 of cellular energetics. The first molecule that we need to talk about is a molecule called ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. This is the molecule of energy in cells. Now I know we've been talking a lot about glucose and carbohydrates and lipids giving us energy, but the energy that's in those molecules is not the type of energy that's used by your cells. So your cells need to take the glucose molecules and convert them into this ATP molecule. Okay, so this is the actual form of cellular energy. It is made up of an adenine, kind of like in the DNA molecule, ribose sugar, and 3 phosphate groups. You can see those 3 phosphate groups right here. That's what these are. Each of these is a phosphate. This is our ribose sugar right here, and then our adenine. It's called adenosine triphosphate because it has 3 phosphate groups. Each of those phosphate groups has a negative charge to it. When 3 negatively charged phosphates are strung together, they cannot stay bonded for long. The 3rd phosphate is broken off quickly, releasing energy for the cells to use. Once it is broken off, it is now called ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, because it lost its 3rd phosphate, so it has 2 phosphates. And 2 and di mean the same thing. I want you to think of magnets. If you take 2 magnets that are not attracted to each other, right? Magnets have a specific side that's attracted to each other. They repel each other. I want you to think of that 3rd phosphate group as a magnet that's been placed on the wrong way. Your cells try to really push that 3rd phosphate group onto this molecule here. There's a lot of energy in that bond as a result of the force that's used to put that molecule on, and then that breaks really quickly. So here's the cycle. It's the ATP-ADP cycle. First, we have an ATP molecule that's been made. We break off that 3rd phosphate group. So now we have ADP, right? There's our 3 phosphates. We minus 1 phosphate. We have 2. And as a result of that, energy is released, and we're left with the ADP molecule. Then your cells add a phosphate group back to that ADP molecule. Now we have energy that's readily available, and then it breaks off and that energy is released. Okay, so this is the ATP cycle right here. What we're going to focus on though is cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is how we get our energy. And here's Cookie Monster. He's eating food. That's how you get this energy. But somehow your body has to take this energy right here and turn it into this cellular energy molecule. And that process is called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the process by which glucose molecules are broken down to release energy for cellular work. This process produces ATP molecules. Plants produce the glucose molecules, and then animals and plants must take those glucose molecules and break them down to use them for energy inside our cells. The equation for cellular respiration is one that you must know. You need to know what goes in and what comes out. So sugar, this is our glucose right here, and oxygen. This is why we breathe. We breathe in that oxygen, and our bodies, through this process of cellular respiration, convert that into carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale out, water, and there's our ATP molecule for energy inside of our cells. So you must know what goes into this reaction and what comes out of this reaction. Aerobic respiration is the kind of respiration that happens when oxygen is available. Aerobic means oxygen. This process produces up to 36 ATP molecules, which is a very large amount of ATP. Anaerobic, that means without. This is when there is no oxygen available. This only produces 2 ATP molecules. So you can see in comparison to aerobic respiration that this process is not very efficient. Another name for anaerobic respiration is fermentation. There are 2 types of fermentation. The first type of fermentation is called alcoholic fermentation. The waste product is called ethanol, which is a type of alcohol. This most commonly occurs in yeast. This is important actually for the production of bread and gasoline. So we use this process quite often to our advantage to create products. But this is what yeasts do. This is actually what yeast are doing when you bake bread. They produce ethanol and they produce carbon dioxide gas as a waste product. And this is what causes the little kind of bubbles and little holes inside bread when a bread is made with yeast. The other type of fermentation is called lactic acid fermentation. And if you are an athlete or anyone who's ever worked out, or maybe even just lifted a really heavy box or moved something, you probably had sore muscles the next day. That is because your muscle cells underwent lactic acid fermentation after they used all the oxygen that was available. This produces lactic acid as a waste product. That lactic acid gets stuck inside your muscle cells temporarily, and that's what actually causes muscle soreness, is this molecule that's just kind of jammed up inside your muscle cells, and it makes them hurt a little bit. So once you start breathing regular oxygen again and your muscle cells can catch back up, the lactic acid will slowly go away and your muscle soreness will slowly go away. So these are all the different types of cellular respiration. So we have aerobic cellular respiration, where we produce up to 36 ATP molecules. And then we have different types of anaerobic respiration, like alcoholic fermentation by yeast cells, lactic acid fermentation by muscle cells in animals, and those only produce about 2 ATP molecules in comparison.